This is the four kosos. So I wanted to give you the calculation better. I mentioned this in passing in a previous year. So I wanted to give all the sources from saying how the Rambam understands a sugya with regards to how one should drink his cups of wine on Passover. It's different than the other Rishonim, the way they have it. And there's a major nafkamina, but it also points out that the Rambam is basically telling you to drink a large quantity of wine. And the way the Rambam brings to that calculation gets to a very amazing thing that you end up drinking enough wine to make an esech. Okay, so let's see. I like to preface this with a point that Chazal said you can use grape juice for Kiddush. Where they say such a thing? They say you could squeeze a cup of wine right before Shabbos and then use that for Kiddush. That's obviously still grape juice. It can't ferment in an hour, right? Mm-hmm. So Chazal say explicitly, you can use grape juice for Kiddush. And when there's a line the Rambam says, some say you're only supposed to use for Kiddush that which you could use on the altar in the temple. Fine wine, right? He says it doesn't mean that it has to be fully fermented 40 days at least, like proper temple wine. It means it cannot be disqualified because it's already been exposed for too long to the open air, megula, or it couldn't have soured or something like that, or it couldn't have been, some other disqualifying thing. Yeah. It means that wine that's not been disqualified. It doesn't mean the finest wine, which is why it is very clear that the straight halacha is using what we call grape juice for Kiddush is totally permissible, totally fine, right? And many hold that way. But it wasn't so much of an issue for most of history. It wasn't a possibility. Why? Because remember, Chazal said you could squeeze wine right before Shabbos and drink that for Kiddush, right? How often do you have fresh grapes with which you could squeeze into grape juice before Shabbos? Only at a certain time of year in certain countries. Most year round, you don't have fresh grapes to squeeze. Here in Eretz Yisrael also, how long is the grape season? It's not that long, right? So you only have a few weeks a year where you could actually squeeze grapes into grape juice and drink it. If you are anywhere else in the world, they don't have grapes. Let's say like Europe, Eastern Europe, so you have to import your wine. So it's already wine, it's already alcoholic. And if you're, let's say now, this time of year in Eretz Yisrael, you can't do such a thing. You know why? Because there's no fresh grapes. If you're going to say Kiddush, it's going to have to be alcoholic wine. There's no way to make sure the grape juice stays grape juice. Technology, what? What do you say? Technology has allowed us to create grape juice that stays. And it's not even pasteurization. Even if you'd pasteurize the grape juice, you have to seal it up really well in order to keep it. Like you have to can it, right? But even our bottled grape juice, which is pasteurized, by the way, how do they prevent it from becoming wine? By adding sulfites. There's a chemical preservative that stops the germs from causing it to ferment, right? So this wasn't really halacha that was relevant for most of history, which is why there's a lot less shakalavitaria about it in the literature. It's only it's a 20th century type of halachic question. Okay? So too, the Rambam and others barely entertained the idea of using fresh grape juice on Passover. Why? Because there's no such thing. Until this recent point in history, there was no havamina that anybody anywhere would ever have grape juice at Passover. Because to make grape juice at Passover, it means you'd have to squeeze the grapes right before Passover. And there's no grapes available right before Passover. There's no vine in Eretz Yisrael that has grapes on it right now. The grapes are only going to have bikurim around Tammuz. Right? Okay. You may be Navim. When Rosh Chodesh Tammuz is when you start to see the first grapes appear on the vine. And when do you collect the grapes? When's the squeezing season for the grapes? Sukkot. Bikurim is at Tammuz, and the grape harvesting time is Sukkot, and you're done harvesting all your grapes by the time the rains come. So there's no such thing as grape juice at a Passover Seder throughout most of history. Lohaya v'lo nivra. So it wasn't a question that is grape juice a good solution for Passover. It's still derech chirus. But even then they say, yeah, of course, if it's good for Kiddush, why does it have to be alcoholic? So we're going to see what the Rambam's opinion here is, and it has an interesting idea. The Rambam says in Hilchos Shabbos that the Shir Hotzah, which is the shiurim we had last week, the Shir Hotzah, shiur something means amount, and something means a lesson or a lecture. Okay, we had lectures, shiurim, about these shiurim, these amounts. So in order to be hit with the prohibition on Shabbos, a person has to remove from the Rishus HaYachid something that's actually useful. There's a threshold. Okay? So taking out a hair, if I were to grab a hair, a human hair from someone's head and walk outside carrying it. So I wouldn't be hit with a, Isser Skila. Why? Because one human hair isn't useful for anything, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to have a threshold of hair. So he says with regards to different foods. And then the Rambam says, Yayin Kidei Rova Revius. Enough wine to make a Rova Revius, a quarter of a Revius. Rova is a subjective thing. Rova means a mathematical quarter. And Revius means a quarter of a log. It's an objective amount. How much is a Revius? This is the common Revius, which is we saw is according to the most lenient opinions within the Rambam, calculations like Rabbi Rabinovich and Makbili, they say it's 75 ml. And according to Rav Chaim, no, it's 86 ml. Kaminyan Kos, right? Gematria of Kos. That's a Revius. So Rova Revius would be a quarter of 75 to 86 ml. Why? Because like the Rambam points out in his Parashah Mishnayos, where he got this from, the Parashah Mishnayos says, Kedei Mezigas HaKos. In order to make a kos that comes out to a Revius, 75 or 86 ml, you need a quarter of that to be wine, pure wine. That's Rova Revius of their wine, okay? So that means, as I point out here, 75 to 86 divided by 4, which is about 20 ml of actual wine. 20 ml of actual wine, when you dilute it with 75% water, comes out to a Revius of, a common Revius of wine. That's the usual amount, and that's for Kiddush. And why is that an amount? Because the Rambam says in Hilchos Kiddush, that's the amount that you use to make Kiddush on Shabbos. That's a basic cup. Okay? So he says here, how you say Kiddush? Lokach kosu machzik ravit o yoter. You have to have a cup that at least holds a Revius or more. Okay? At least a Revius. And then you wash it inside and out and fill it with water, fill it with wine, hold it in your right hand, lift it up a tefach or more. Don't use your left hand and recite the Kiddush, right? The way we say Kiddush. So a Kiddush cup has how much? It has at least a Revius of this resulting of diluted wine. And that diluted wine was made with at least about 20 ml of water, okay? A 20 ml of original wine. Yeah. That's the usual Kiddush cup. So the question I asked Nahagata was, where's the Nesachim of Korban Pesach? It says in the Mishnah that when they would conduct the Passover service in the temple, the Levim would be reciting their song at the point where they would process the Korban Pesach, the Shechita, as it says. Normally, when the Levim sing a song at a temple service, at the time when they're pouring the wine on the altar, the libations that follow the actual animal service, right? So when God's getting the drink of wine, so to speak, that's when the Levim would sing the song, and that's when the Kohanim would sound the trumpets. Okay. But here in the temple, the Korban Pesach does not have any accompanying libations, but there are Kohanim sounding the trumpets, as we saw, and the Levim are singing the Hallel. That's the song that accompanies Korban Pesach. But where's the wine? Where's the wine? So Rambam says, okay, there's no wine. So sound the trumpets and sing the song when they're doing the rest of the Korban. So the question was, where's the wine? Okay. So it says here, normally it's done when they're pouring the wine. So my question was, why are there no nesachim and minachos with Korban Pesach? Normally there's a mincha also, something made out of flour. Korban Pesach neshav korban tzibor v'ton shiro. But Korban Pesach we see has sort of din as a public korban because it has a song, right? And it has a set time too. My suggestion was that the menachos and the libation of the Korban Pesach are the matzah and the 4 kosos that Chazal instituted. Well, I know it's the Rambam, the Chazal institute, just like the Shiro of the Levim. That's why you have Hallel at both the Seder and at the time they do Korban Pesach. What other korban do you have to sing a song when you eat it? Only Korban Pesach has a din that when you eat it, you have to have Hallel also. So Chazal put a Seder. Really, you could do all the mitzvahs as a jumble. Haggadah, Arba Kosos, Matzah, Maror, Korban Pesach, but Chazal put a specific order, but it's all considered one time. The last thing you say is Hallel, right? Yeah. The last part, but really you could say Hallel beforehand. As a matter of fact, sometimes the minhag was Hallel is the first thing. That's where the minhag of Hallel and Beis Knesses came from. Because they're afraid people would be drunk and also illiterate, you start the Seder with Hallel. The first thing you do, Leil Pesach, is Mariv, Halil, and then the 4 kosos and the matzah and maror. Understand? But Halil is a necessity for both the act of Korban Pesach in the temple and the consumption of Korban Pesach in the house. Right? Very interesting. So, trying to say it must be that the drinking the 4 kosvos is not its own mitzvah. It's the minal. It's the nesachim of Korban Pesach. But according to the Rambam, this is more so the case that the arba kosos fit the nesachim. How do we know this? Because the Rambam says that if a person were to voluntarily want to bring wine as a temple offering, he can't bring 2 log. He can't bring 1 log. A log is about a liter. A log is 12 times the revius. No, sorry. A revius, yeah. The log is four times the revius. A revius is a quarter of a log. 1 log isn't good. A log is about 300 ml, or a little bit more, according to Rav Chaim. It's 350 or so. Okay. You can't bring 1 log. You can't bring 2 logs. You have to bring at least 3 or 4 login. The Rambam says you want to donate. The minimal nesech is 3 logs. That's a nesech. That's called rivi'i tahin, a quarter of a hin, and that's the nesech of what? A lamb. A young lamb is to be brought with how much wine? 3 log, or rivi'i tahin. The Rambam says with regards to the kosos on Leil Pesach, and this is amazing. He says, unlike regular kiddush all year round, arba kosos elu tzarich limzogotan kadesha ties shtia reva. It has to be, you have to dilute the wine, so that's a proper drinking, a pleasant drinking. Rambam says not derech eretz to drink wine straight up. The Rambam doesn't hold, like we saw previous times, of that Rashi idea that somehow or other their wine used to be more powerful. And we're back in Eretz Yisrael, we see that the wine comes out to maximum 14% alcohol and a certain taste. You know, wine is wine. It hasn't changed throughout history. Hakol lefi yayin lefi das hashoseh. Really, it depends on the wine and the guy who's drinking, what his feelings are, you know, how he likes it. V'lo yivkod barbatan me'revi'it yayin chai. Of these 4 cups, he has to at least have a revius of actual wine in there. Rambam says, unlike Kiddush on Shabbos, which is you start with minimal, you know, or you start with a quarter of a revius, which is about 20 ml. Each cup that you're going to dilute starts with the full revius already of actual wine, 75 or 86 ml of actual wine. Then you dilute it. Rambam's saying that each cup is supposed to be a log. Yes. Yes.
Where'd your 3 go?
What? No, I'm trying to say that 4 logan, but the Rambam says kol lefi das. Really, Rambam also says you could dilute it 2/3 water and 1/3 wine. For Kiddush, remember when Rambam said a quarter or revius, that's a minimal shear for Shabbos. Technically speaking, you'd use more than that. If you were to have, if dilution was more water to wine, let's say a 1/5 already wine, it's already not enough wine. A 1/5 of a revius, let's say 15 ml, right, is already not a shear on Shabbos. That's too dilute. But if you take out more wine, let's say 30 ml, right, and you dilute it 3 to 1 with water, 2 to 1 with water with that, right? Let's say 60 ml water, 30 ml wine. The Rambam would say, yeah, that's also good. You understand? So according to the Rambam, what you end up with is 4 logan. You're going to be drinking 4 logan of wine, or about 3. You know, not the full thing. They don't have to go overboard necessarily. But the way the Rambam has it, you start off with a revius in each cup, an actual revius times 4, and then times the dilution. So it comes out to about 3 to 4 logan of wine have to be drunk at Pesach, according to the Rambam. Why? Presumably because the wine that's drunk at Seder Pesach is like the nesachim that were supposed to accompany Korban Pesach. Questions about that? Yeah, it's an interesting mathematics how that works out, right? So, by the way, the Rambam bases this on his understanding of the sugya. Okay, Rambam says there's a sugya in Pesachim in Kuf Chet, if I'm not mistaken. It's just not brought. The language of the Gemara is brought by the Rambam. It's not brought, for example, by the Shulchan Aruch. He says if you were to drink the wine straight up, you fulfilled your mitzvah of drinking the wine, but not cherus, right? And if you dilute it, if you don't, then you have other problems, right? Remember that Gemara.
אתה יודע שהכוונה ולא יפחות מארבעתן מרבית יין חי, הכוונה לא
Because
רבית סך הכל.
okay, so he says Mirvit Yain Chai, Revius Yain Chai. Earlier, the Rambam says Revius. When he uses the word Revius, that's the objective measure. That's a quarter of a log. Rova was his word, and distinction from that was a quarter of something, like the Mikadem, 0.25 times X. Okay, that says Kedei Rova Revius. Rova Revius is a quarter of the objective measure of a Revius, like he says twice. And here he says Revius Yain Chai, a Revius of Yain Chai. By the way, the Mefarshim on the Rambam point this out also. Okay?
לא, אבל פה הכוונה שלו היא בסך הכל בארבע
No,
כוסות.
no, means Revius Yain Chai, because Yain Chai means undiluted. He tells you have to dilute it properly,
Okay.
but Lo Yivchot Revius Yain Chai, but you can't do less than a Revius of Yain Chai.
לא יפחות מארבעתן.
Yeah, of each of these cups. Yeah. So look at Makbili, for
מה, אפשר
example.
לומר שהכוונה
Yeah, no, it's
הסך
not.
הכל היין של
No,
כל
it's not, because you look in there. The one I'll show you more proofs to this. Rav Kapach points this out also, in the Rambam.
אבל
They,
לפי הרמב"ם אני צריך לשתות ליטר של
yeah,
שתייה בכל כוס?
no, the Rambam, no. Each cup starts off with 75 ml of straight up wine, and then you could dilute it with 2/3 water, 3/4 water, no more than 3/4 water, and about 2/3, starting with 2/3 water up to 3/4 water. Now you're going to say, wait a minute, that's a lot of wine for Kiddush. That's basically, 80 ml of wine, and then I could add, another, 320 ml of, another 240 ml of water to it. That's still a pretty large cup. That's like drinking like a large mug of beer. Yeah, that's a lot of wine. So the answer is, according to the Rambam, first of all, you can use grape juice. Okay, kol dasa ashoseh, and that's what we do. Secondly, the Rambam says, but you don't have to finish the whole cup. It just has to be, you just have to discharge your obligation, you have to drink rove cup. And the Rambam continues. Here's the line I was trying to say before. If he drinks all 4 cups, miyayin sheino mazug yatsa yedei arba kosos. He drinks 4 cups of wine straight up. He did 4 cups. V'lo yatsa de cherus. He didn't complete cherus. He didn't get that part of the mitzvah down. Shasa arba kosos mizugin b'vas achas yatsa de cherus v'lo yatsa de arba kosos. He drinks all of them properly, but one after another. He didn't do it the way Chazal said, 4 separate cups. This din is not brought in the Shulchan Aruch, by the way, because Shulchan Aruch interprets that sugya not as literally as the Rambam, like he does with Rashi and the Rashbam. We'll understand this to mean basically that each cup starts with a revius. Each cup gets to a revius through dilution. And Rashi says, but they used to dilute their wine, but we don't dilute anymore. Yeah, so they understand the sugya entirely differently. So that's why, for example, Shulchan Aruch, it doesn't bring the exact lashon of Shas because they interpret it differently from the Rambam, and it would make more sense for them to present in their own way. Okay, so there you go. If you want to hold like the Rambam, not everything people do like the Rambam. The minhag obviously is like the Shulchan Aruch in this case, but what I haven't seen, let's say, what the Vilna Gaon's opinion on this matter is. My whole point is that if you do the math, the Rambam is basically telling you that you're going to have 3 or 4 log of wine, ultimately diluted wine, but still, you're going to drink a lot of wine at the Seder, diluted wine, and that happens to match with the same shi'ur that the Rambam said is the minimum of a nesachim in the temple. So this strengthens the idea that the arba kosos at the Seder is in part to sort of like the libations that accompany Korban Pesach, because Korban Pesach is the ultimate Korban meant to be eaten. Korban Pesach turns the house in which it is eaten into a temple, and it turns the people eat it into kohanim. Okay, that I guess concludes it. Next week we're going to continue with the actual laws of Korban Pesach, al Seder. Any questions, comments? No, I'd like to wish everybody a very happy Purim and a very safe and quiet Ramadan.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.